third topic for this panel is Judiciary System by Maître Nizar Saghiye. Maître Saghiye is a co-founder and executive director of the Legal Agenda since 2011. He's a member of the editorial team of the Legal Agenda in Tunis, lawyer and implementer of strategic litigation in Lebanon to advocate and defend causes related to civil, economic, and social rights and liberties. Author of social policies, especially in relation to judicial independence, public property, the environment, marginalized groups, public and union freedoms. He's also author of research and bills on judicial independence, people who disappeared during the Lebanese Civil War, people who use drugs, harassment inside and outside the workplace, workers' rights, and various other topics. Welcome, Maître Saghiye. Allow me as well to welcome Maître Adel Nassar. Maître Nassar is a well-established Lebanese lawyer. He studied law in the US, France, and Lebanon. Maître Nassar is also a co-manager of the Raphael and Associé law firm. Mr. Nassar will be presenting his analysis on the co-author Nizar Saghiye papers titled Judiciary System. Again, it's time to remind you our ground rules. So the author will have 15 minutes to present his paper. Our discussant will get 6 to 8 minutes in order to discuss the paper. And then we'll leave the floor to you, our public present here in the hall and over Zoom, to ask your question, as we are seeking to have a participatory forum, while any question could be helpful to enhance policy reforms. Thank you again. Maître Saghiye, the floor is yours.
طيب صباح الخير. رح احكي بالعربي فاذا حدا بده يحط الترانسليشن اوكي. طيب اكيد
Of course, talking about the previous speakers, Mrs. Ghannaji and Mrs. Najm, and they explained a big part of what I wanted to explain. I will follow the same approach. What are we talking about in the judiciary issue? Regarding the judiciary, we cannot talk about the reform of the judiciary anymore. We're not talking about something technical. We're talking about something institutional, which is very profound. It is related to the political system as a whole. We're not facing a judiciary that is not doing its job. We are in a real system of impunity. It is total impunity. In fact, a judiciary is made for a certain category of people, whereas a certain category is not cannot be targeted by the judiciary thanks to a protection system. Now, while I'm talking, there's a minister of finance who refuses to sign the judicial appointments. He has nothing to do with judicial appointments. His job is to create revenues for the judiciary, but he decided to block the judiciary. He decided to block these designations. Why? Because he wanted to block another court, and this is related to the port explosion investigations. Why? This is because they do not want any real investigation in the issue of the port blast, and to leave things under the red lines that are being drawn. But people are considered that he is not signing only for regarding the port explosion, but he is not signing also because Riyad Salame, i.e. central bank governor, because he submitted a case to stop the issue of illicit enrichment against him and his brother that costed the Lebanese around 500 million US dollars. The same applies to Makataf firm to stop the same case. So it is an impunity system that is ramificated, and it is not related to only one political party. It can be related to the port blast and also to the collapse. So the explosion and the collapse wouldn't have happened in case there were people thinking about what Lina Ghanashe mentioned, or if some people were thinking about the public interest, but everybody was thinking about special interests, and they considered that they do not care if the country collapses or the capital exploded. In case there was any special interest under threat, would have seen those people reacting. This is not my issue. What about this impunity system? How did it see the light? It wasn't a coincidence. Today we tell jokes and we talk about people and judges. It is a system that stands. Many things led to this result, and the Lebanese are seeing these results very well. It is good what happened now. Some of it is that the Lebanese are seeing a certain pedagogy of the facts. They are seeing to what extent this impunity system exists, and they can control the situation. Of course, this impunity system is related very well to the Zaim's system. Zaims or local leaders can control the situation. So the whole system of accountability and the humanitarian dimensions and social dimensions are absent and cannot be tackled. And the only issue to be talked about is that those zaims remain above any accountability. More than that, the system exists because of the politicization of the judiciary. How did that happen? This happened through the organization of the judiciary. And we all agree on that, and I will explain some aspects. But the most dangerous is the following. The people who are suspected are using the politicization of the judiciary as a pretext to escape the judiciary. I will give three examples. The first example, bank secrecy, that was mentioned by Marie-Claude Najm. Bank secrecy, when we had this law to be discussed before the parliament, after all political parties said that they want to lift banking secrecy, surprisingly, we have seen many political parties inside the parliament saying how we will lift the banking secrecy and give the judiciary the prerogative to see and to get informed about our accounts. How come do we have trust in judiciary? They are saying that judiciary is politicized. Therefore, it was a surreal. Those who have politicized the judiciary are using this as a pretext to escape their responsibilities. This issue had a multiplying effect. The second example, it was giving the deputies the right to challenge administrative decisions taken by the government. For example, we have challenged a lot of environmental cases, and this happened through many associations. But in the different cases, the state council considers that those who made these petitions do not have any quality. So MPs try to do so. But then we had the Elil Firzli. He was the deputy speaker at the time. He said, this was in April 2020, the current judiciary needs a whole change, whether we change it as a whole or we remain on the current situation without adding prerogatives, but it is a shame to make laws that we are happy about and that are not applied. is it possible to give way for current judges to submit reports about suspects and including one of us? So he was asking the deputies, do you accept to increase the prerogatives of judges, whereas one of us can be suspected, and you all know that the judiciary is politicized. So this was a question that was very expressive. This initiative, led by deputies, was rejected in the parliament. The third example that I want to tackle is about what Najib Miati did when one of the prosecutors went to one of the banks and tried to get information. This is related to BDL governor and his brother. Najib Miati interfered and he phoned the public prosecutor, and when he was asked, he said, I didn't interfere, I just put things back on track because this judiciary is politicized. And he politicized the judiciary because he considered that the issue was politicized. Miati, he called the government to put an end to judiciary anarchy. What does that mean? This system is made so that everybody can leverage impunity. So in case any judge dares to open any file, this is considered anarchy. And so he started to summon the different officials, and today maybe is followed up. I will not go into the details. All that shows that the politicization of judiciary is used by those who politicize the judiciary to step away from the prerogatives and responsibilities. I will speak quickly about two main things: how this politicized regime or system was set up, and what are the reform initiatives that took place and that are taking place that can be built upon for the future. But before that, I would like to remind that we are talking today, whereas the judiciary is not working at all because it considers that working conditions are not decent for any judge, whether financially or morally. And so this will increase impunity and aggravate impunity. How did this system see the light? How the judiciary turned into this political victim? How this judiciary was politicized? When we see how the judiciary is organized, not only in laws but also in practices are more important, we see that this system is a real oligarchy. It is an oligarchy controlled by the Zaims, and instead of allowing citizens to find their rights in judiciary, they turned this judiciary to be used against citizens and the state in case this is necessary. How did this happen? It happened through hierarchy. Marie-Claude Najm talked about hierarchy in the senior or the highest judicial council. All these councils are like a government in terms of the judiciary. They turn the designation of people into something to be decided by the government and the political forces. Not all of them are not elected but designated by the hierarchy. So when they are designated in the government, they are designated based on the confessional quota. And when we talk about confessional quota, we're not talking about protecting confessional confessions, but also the protected persons of Zaims. They turn into the authorities' arm inside the judiciary in spite of the opposite. And so due to this hierarchy, they turn into people interfering in the judiciary. And thus it is true that senior judges interfere in judiciary. In addition to that, we have the confessionalization of positions. They used to use the position critical positions, but now it is confessional positions. This didn't happen before the war, and this happened after the war until 2017, when Minister Jurai said that we reached full confessional balance in all on all levels, and this is something that we should fear. We're not talking about the senior positions, we're talking about all the positions of judges. What is more serious is how they are designated. When judiciary is confessionalized, it is because, or to say that all confessional are chosen according to the confessional interests of the local leaders. So, judiciary turns into positions of influence. It turns into an extension of the confessional system that we are suffering from at all levels. After that, and in spite all of this system that is controlled by all the councils, they give themselves the right of veto, and this comes to complete the whole picture. They are, or they receive the veto right. You can decide as a higher judicial council the designations, but we can stop that afterwards. So these parties can make a vote. Today, the Minister of Finance is using the veto right. He is not signing if the confessional Zaim refuses this signature. Therefore, since 10 years, if we review the designations decrees, there were 9 drafts. Only 2 were passed and 7 were failed. These 7 were failed by the Minister of Justice or the President of the Republic or the Prime Minister, and today we are seeing this failure by the Minister of Finance. So this veto made the whole designations controlled by the political class. So for the higher judicial council to succeed in its task, it has to accept that. In 2017, a statement was issued by this by the council to say why he visited different political figures. I don't have time. I will try to be quicker. So when he visited different political figures, the judges heard that and they considered that they should do the same. So the judges started doing so, and here all judicial ethics were failed. And so our concept about a successful judge are the judges who have good relationship with politicians and not the opposite, and this led us to this situation. I will not talk about the different incentives given to judges who are used as consultants. I will talk about this system of protection and immunity. It's not only the immunity of deputies and ministers, only.
والمعلمين وغيره كيف كانت عم
And
تتفاعل
we
بوقت
have all
النزاع.
seen this
بس
in
في
the
بس
port
في
issue.
في
There
موانع
are
كثير خطيرة
other
بالملاحقة
obstacles
اللي
that
ما لازم
prevent
نغيبها أبدا عن
prosecution
النقاش يلي
that
هي
shouldn't
السرية
be hidden.
المصرفية.
It's about banking
أكثر
secrecy.
الحالات ما عم
The
نقدر
most
نلقط
cases
تبييض
where we
الأموال
cannot
أو الإسراء غير مشروع لأنه بكل
detect
بساطة ما عندنا قدرة
illegal
نفوت على السرية
enrichment
المصرفية.
or money
أي
laundering,
جهاز
it is
واحد
because we
بيحتكر
cannot lift
دفع
banking secrecy.
السرية المصرفية
Only
يلي هو
one
هيئة التحقيق
organ
الخاصة
controls that.
بإشراف
It
رياض
is the
سلامة
special
يلي يبدو
investigation
أنه عم
committee that
بترد
is
على
under the
طلبات
supervision of Riyad Salame that
المعلومات
is not
بشأن رياض سلامة.
answering for the
هيدا
information
نوعا ما
requests about
شكل من
Riyad Salame.
أشكال
This is
ليش كيف صارت هيدا
a
وكيف
kind
هيدا
of
النظام
explanation
كثير
about
أمثلة فيه
how
بس
the
ما رح فوت
system
فيها. رح أحكي
was
بحط
set
دقائق
up.
إذا بتعطيني شو
I will
الشغلات اللي
just
ممكن
now
تصير.
tackle
إذا
what
فينا
things
أقل
can
شوي
be
لأنه
done.
اوريدي صار قاطعين 20 دقيقة بس تنترك مجال للأسئلة كمان.
يلا 3 دقائق. طيب شو انعمل بهيدا الوقت؟
What
بهيدا
happened
الوقت
during this time?
شو بينعمل
What
بواحد
can
يفكر
be
شو بده
done?
ينعمل. في 3 محلات كان
There
عم
are
بيصير فيها تقدم
three
وتطور واليوم اكيد فيها
fields
شغلات
where
ايجابيه بس
developments
اليوم كمان في
took
تراجع
place,
بالمسيره.
but
اول شغله
first of
على
all,
صعيد البيئه
it is
القضائيه
related to
هيدا
the
البيئه المهنيه
judicial
تبع القضاه.
working environment
انا
or
برايي
professional environment.
من
I
10
think
سنين
that
لليوم اذا
since
ما
10
اكثر
years,
صار في تطور
there was a
كبير جدا
huge
بكيف
development on how
الثقافه
the
القضائيه، كيف
judicial
القضاه
culture
بيشتغلوا، كيف
changed and
بيعبروا
how
عن نفسهم.
judges
هيدا
expressed
موجب
themselves.
التحفظ يلي كان مفروض القاضي ضله صامت وساكت وما
Regarding
يحكي
this
ووحيد
issue of
ومنعزل،
having
وبالتالي ما في حدا
silent
بيقدر يتدخل
judges
بشغله اكثر من اذا كان وحيد
changed.
وصامت ومنعزل. هيدا الثقافه كان لابد من
This
هدمها.
culture
هيدا بتصور
was changed,
جاوزناه
and we
كثير
have
بفعل نادي القضاة
stepped
المنشأ
over
بال
this
2018
culture
بعد
thanks
تهديدات
to
كثير
the
كانت عم
Club of
تتوجه
Judges that
لأعضائه
was
ومنهم
established in
الإنشائيين
2018
فيه.
in spite of
وفعلا
all the
كانوا عم
threats.
بدهم يمنعوه
And
ويقولوا
when
رح تطلعوا جمعية
they were
طائفية. حتى
threatened,
كتبنا كتاب وثبتنا فيه
we
انه كل
have
التجمعات
written
القضائيه اللي
a book
صارت
and in which
كانت
we
مانيفستو
confirm that
ضد الطائفيه.
all judicial
وفعلا نادي القضاة كل
clubs
ما نشر
and
اعلان بال
similar
2018
associations
كل
were
خطاب
against
استقبال
confessionalism.
واعلى
And
بكثير من
since
اي
it was
حسابات
established,
تطور
the Club
للطائفيه.
of Judges
بس
is
كمان
not
علّم
confessional at
كل
all.
المفهوم تبع الوظيفه القضائيه
This
وطريقتها مع
changed
الناس
the
وغير
whole
اخلاقيه. وبالتالي كان كثير
concept of
مهم
the
عليها
judicial
وخاصه مع الهرميه فكانت
function.
بلشت
And there's
اكثر شيء
also
خطر
something
على
related
القضاه
to the
هي الهرميه
relation with the
القضائيه.
judicial
لذلك عم
hierarchy,
نشوف
i.e., senior
شباب عم بيتوحدوا
judges.
مع
They have
بعض
seen
لحتى
young judges
يتضامنوا مع بعض
united
بوجههم
and
اذا
in
كانوا
solidarity
مستهدفين
against them.
ومضطرين انهم يبحثوا عن حدا يحميهم من الهرميه القضائيه. الامر الثاني اللي
The
كمان صار
second
فيه تطور
issue
كثير يلي هو
is
انه المجتمع يحس حاله
the
معارض
society
باصلاح القضاء.
feels concerned
لانه
about
المجتمع
the
تعود
reform
انه
of the
القاضي بيجيب
judiciary.
لي حقي بس
The
انا عم بضل
society
اعمل شيء
is
للقاضي.
used
وهيدا الشيء
to a
تغير هيدا
judiciary that
المفهوم
brings
بشكل
citizens
كتير
their
كبير.
rights. But this
واهتمام
situation
العالم
changed,
بالقضاء
and
صار
people
مع
are
ال
more interested
2017 تشريع.
about
بتذكر ما بتخيل
the
عدد
judiciary.
الندوات يلي صارت
I
باستقلال
saw a
القضاء
lot
كنا عم
of
نروح عليها بكل البلدان.
about
كان
sessions
السؤال
about the
دائما
independence of
نساله مين
judiciary,
هون قانوني
and I
ومين هون
always
ببلش
used to ask
بحكام
who
قانونيين.
is
فجأة تحول استقلال القضاء
the
يلي هو
person
مسألة كتير
expert in
تفكيرية وراحت
laws
لمسألة
and
عمليا
judiciary.
كل الناس
I
مهتمين
used
فيها انه عرفوا
to
قيمة
have only
القضاء.
1%.
وإذا ما صار في
Surprisingly,
ناس تدافع عن
many
القضاء ما فينا
people
ننتظر أنه
turn
نقابل قضاة
into
لحتى يقدروا
being
يساعدونا فيه.
interested in the reform
طبيعي
of the
أنه يكون في
judiciary
ناس
and
بدنا
its
ندافع
reform.
عنهم وتدافع
It
عنهم
is
كمان.
natural to have
ولكن هون كمان
people
مثل ما عم بيصير بموضوع البيئة
who are
القضائية عم ترجع الأمور شوي لورا بفعل الانهيار
concerned
بشكل
about that.
أساسي في
Of
أحضان
course,
القضاة
there is frustration because
بالمعنويات
judges are
والإرشاد.
being
على
frustrated
صعيد
on the
البلد
financial level and
يلي
other
الربوح يلي
levels
صار بعد الثورة بموضوع استقلال
in the
القضاء
country,
واهتمام
and
العالم
given the
بشأنه
public
هو
interest
بكل تفصيل
about the
بالتفاصيل
different
بالتنظيم
details
القضائي مش بس
about
العمل
the judicial
القضائي. هيدا
organization,
كمان
this
عم بتنعمل عليه ترسانات إعلامية
we are seeing
لتطهير الوعي.
huge media
ولما
wars
بحكي عن الإعلام
in
بفهم
on
إعلام
this
القضاء
level,
بفهم
and when we see
النيابة
how
القضائية.
judicial issues are being tackled,
بيشعر
we
الواحد انه
feel
كلياته
that
عم بيجربوا بس يهدوا
media are
الوضوح
trying
يلي احنا عم ننجح
to
نعمله لحتى
destroy
الناس
this
عم ننجح
clarity
نعمله
that we are succeeding
بتأكيد
in with
الوضوح
people.
وبخلق
Media are
شك
trying
وتردد
to
بأي شيء عم
create
يعملوه القضاء
uh,
وبما فيهم
continuous
كمان أمنوا
doubts
وخلوا
about the
ثقتهم كمان
work of the
بالطبيعة
judiciary under
السياسية.
the pretext
آخر شيء بدي أحكي
of saying that judiciary is
ينفذ
politicized.
وبالتالي
Finally,
شو الإصلاح القضاء
what is
لأنه الواحد
the reform
بده
of
يغير
the
الموازين
judiciary?
وبده يغير
If we want
كذا
to change the
مهم
laws
جدا يكون
and
في بيئة
judiciary,
شبابية
there must
بتشتغل
be
مهم جدا يكون في
a,
مجتمع عمل يخلق شبكة
judiciary
تظاهر
environment
واسعة حول القضاء وكمان في
and
عملية
also a
تدريب
solidarity
لنفس هدول
network
القضاء
around the
للمؤسسات
judiciary.
المنظمة اليوم بالضم في
There is
أنشطة عم
an
توحد
alliance
مفردات
in this regard
القضاء
that
ولكن
joins
كمان
66
المشاريع التنفيذية
associations.
مهمة كتير مش بس مهمة لتوصل مهمة
The
لحتى
legal
نعيش
projects are very
نطبق
important in
شو
this
هو
regard.
استقلال القضاء كيف نفهم
How do we
نعرف
understand and
ربطنا
define the
المشاريع
independence of
القانونية
judiciary?
بمعايير
We
الدولة
have
وحقوق
related
الإنسان
these
أخذت
drafts to
3
the
سنين و3 أشهر
international human rights
لإدارة العدل علما أنه نظام الدولة
laws,
والوظيفة
and this was
والأدوات
tackled
بيجبر
for
بيجبر
more
5
than
سنوات
3
للإنفاذ
years in the parliament,
وبالتالي
knowing that the
بيكون معه
laws
3 سنين وشهرين ومع ذلك
imposed
بيطلع
that
بالآخر إنه
this should be
بخالف كثير من المعايير
tackled by
الدولية
only
فنحن
within
ساعتها
1 month, and
ناشرنا
after
وحكينا
that
وعملنا
we
ولكن لجأنا
reached a draft law that
لمنظمة
is
دولية
against the
بتعطي رأي ما
the
تتدخل
different
أبدا بالسيادة اللي هي الكوميسيون دو
laws,
فينيس
and
اللي هي
that's why we
القانون
went
الدولي
to the
وعندنا 5
Venice
مستشار
Commission,
قانونيين لربما في شيء صغرى بهالقانون
and we have
لنشوف إذا صحيح
consulted
هيدا قانون
this
بيأمن
commission
استقلال
to see
القضاء
if
هل
this
بيعطي
law
ضمانات حقيقية
guarantees the
للقضاة
independence of the
ولا عم
judiciary,
بيرجع
and does
يعطي
it give
ضمانات للنظام
guarantees
السياسي أنه يسيطر على
to the
القضاء
judges. And
وفعلا يعني بفضل شخص موجود
thanks
هون ماري كلود
to
نجم
Marie Claude
هيدي
Najm,
الخطاب تقدم ووصلت للجنة
and
الكوميسيون دو
so the
فينيس
Venice Commission
ومفروض تطلع
came,
تطلع
came to Lebanon,
بكره
and
داخليا بتصور بس حيصير علني
it will
بنص
publish soon its
لحظيات
report
تقريبا
by mid of
وبالتالي
June,
بيكون عم
and
نطلع
this way
عمليا
we will
الخطاب حول استقلال
have
القضاء لمستوى تاني
a
ونطلع
real
بقى
speech
من
about
النقاش
the
التافه
independence of the
عشان
judiciary,
شيعي
and we will get
لنحول
out
نتحول
of
نرجع
this
على معايير
confessional
المحاكمة العادلة
speech, and
ومعايير
then we will
استقلال
base
القضاء
our work
فنرجع
on
نبني
the
معنى الحق ومعنى
independence of judiciary
هالمؤسسة
and
اللي
the
انوجدت
different
لتخدم الناس بالآخر
values
لتحقيق
of
حريات
this
الناس
institution
والدولة
that
شكرا كثير
protects
وبعتذر
the freedom of the people and that protects the state. Thank you very
شكرا.
much.
Thank you ماتر صغية. ماتر عادل.
I give the floor to Mr. Adel Nassar.
Moi, je vais intervenir en français. J'avais déjà
I will speak in French
surtout à l'USJ.
since we are in USG.
C'est du militantisme aussi, Monsieur Biffin. Bon, intervenir après mon confrère Nizar
Donc,
Sarri.
speaking after Mr. Saraye is a challenge. First of all, because Saraye is a reference,
On se réfère à une référence.
and
On ne la discute pas. Et ensuite,
because
il ne m'en a pas laissé.
he didn't give me a lot of time and leave me a lot of time.
Pour revenir à la justice elle-même.
Going back to the judiciary by itself, I would like to
Sur la question de
talk
la
for 2 minutes
représentation
about
communautaire,
the
représentativité communautaire, parce que tout le monde,
this confessional representation.
je crois
I
qu'il faut
think that we
distinguer
have make the
représentativité communautaire
distinction
et
between the confessional representation and the confessional instrumentalization. So we have to reconsider the system. We cannot simply ignore the social and demographic characteristics in Lebanon. This system shouldn't be instrumentalized. In France, which is a secular country, it has transformed secularism into the cedars in our flag is facing today, for example, some instrumentalization of identities in France. So once the state is not protecting, people can find a political force to opt for instrumentalization. I will address the question. Consider that you are judges and that you have 10 people that are convicted. 10 are blamed and one is innocent. Do you
ou vous libérez les 10.
free the
On va
10,
faire ça à main levée, comme ils le font de façon très
or you do the
sympathique
opposite.
normalement. Qui
Who
considère qu'il faut
considers that
libérer
you
les
have to
10
free all of
s'il y
them
a 9
because there
qui sont
are
coupables de
9
pédophilie et un innocent,
are
vous pouvez
accused
lever la
of
main, qui
pedophilia
veut
and
condamner
one
les
is
10
innocent?
et, et qui
And
libère les
who frees
10?
the 10?
Bon, c'est à main levée, مش بالمنادات. Bon, en réalité, je n'ai pas eu beaucoup de
I
votants,
didn't have a lot of
mais
voters actually.
ça détermine
This
la manière que l'on a de
determines the
percevoir ce qui est
way
juste
to see
et de
how
percevoir le
we
rôle de la
perceive what
justice.
is
Est-ce
just
qu'un
and what
juge
is the role
peut
of the
se
judiciary.
permettre de condamner un innocent au nom de la morale, au nom de l'intérêt
Can a
général, au nom de
judge
quoi que ce soit?
not
Ceci
judge
étant dit,
someone who is to
parler
judge someone who is innocent?
de l'indépendance de la
This
justice,
leads us to talk about the
évidemment,
independence of the
suppose un certain
judiciary,
nombre
and this
d'éléments. Ce n'est
necessitates a
pas, comme
number
disait
of elements, like
Madame la ministre, ça suppose une
Mrs.
indépendance de
Najm said.
l'institution et ça
This
suppose une indépendance d'un
requires
juge
independence of the
lui-même.
institution, independence
Et on
of
est rarement
judges.
indépendant, on n'est pas
We
indépendant
are
de son
rarely
intelligence.
independent
C'était difficile d'être indépendant. On
by
essaye en général d'être neutre.
nature.
On
We
essaye
are
d'être neutre. Sauf qu'il y a des
usually
études qui avaient été
neutral more
faites,
than being
pour que
independent.
vous le sachiez, après un documentaire sur
According to
l'erreur
a study
judiciaire,
about the
les peines
judicial
ont été plus
roles,
clémentes les 2-3 jours qui ont suivi le fameux documentaire qui est passé à la télévision. Plus clémentes qu'avant.
and
On n'est
after
pas indépendant des médias,
a
on essaye
documentary
d'être neutre au
was
début, on va essayer d'être neutre.
broadcasted,
Ceci dit,
some sentences
comment on va assurer
were
cette
different than before for
indépendance
2 3 days. So
du
we
pouvoir
are,
politique?
or the judiciary is
Maître Savier et
affected by
d'autres
the media
compagnons
and
le disaient,
other
économes.
tools. So
Évidemment, la première réaction est de dire, bon, il faut revoir
maybe one
notre
of the first
nomination des
reactions,
juges et
we
pourquoi pas
have
les
to
laisser. Mais moi, je me posais la question,
revisit the
et
issue
Rose l'a évoqué, c'est est-ce qu'on ne
of
permettrait
how
pas
to
de passer
designate judges and the whole mechanism.
l'intervention du pouvoir politique au copinage corporatiste, c'est-à-dire,
So we have to ask the question about
la ministre expliquait que c'était souvent les juges qui intervenaient entre
the
eux.
issue that
Bon,
judges
même si ce
interfering in the
risque
work of
n'existe
other
pas,
judges.
est-ce qu'en réalité le problème n'est pas le pouvoir exécutif lui-même dans
Isn't
les
it the
cas où il se
problem
trompe plutôt que le pouvoir
of the
exécutif en
executive
train de
power
nommer? Mais ce pouvoir exécutif que nous
that
avons au
we
Liban ne
have in
constitue pas
Lebanon
lui-même un problème?
that is
Et
facing by itself
surtout,
problems?
est-ce qu'on peut garantir une
Can we
indépendance de la
guarantee a
justice
judiciary
sans qu'il
independence
n'y ait
without
une réelle
having
rotation au
a
pouvoir?
rotation in
C'est la
the
chose la
power,
plus
which is
importante
very important,
et qui
that
détermine la
determines
neutralité
the
des
neutrality
juges
of
et de
judges and the
l'administration et que
administration?
la majorité devienne minorité, que
So
la
the
minorité
majority
devienne
becomes the
majorité et les
minority and
juges
the minority becomes
résideraient
majority, and at this
certainement
time
être proches d'un pouvoir
judges will
politique qui ne
not be
va pas durer.
close to political parties.
Affranchir donc
So
le juge du pouvoir politique et c'est vraiment
freeing
important
judges
et comme
from the
disait
political
Maître
will
Savier, il ne faut
is
pas
very
que
important, and so the
l'indépendance de la
independence
justice
of
ne serve
judiciary
de
shouldn't
moyen
be
pour
a
paralyser la
means to
justice
paralyze the
quand elle n'est
judiciary.
pas
So we
indépendante
say
ou
it's not
indépendante,
independent, so
donc on
we
l'empêche de
block
travailler.
its work.
Ceci
So
étant dit,
based on that,
ne faut-il pas
shouldn't
aussi
we also
garantir
guarantee the
l'indépendance de
independence
la
of
justice
judiciary
à l'égard des médias
towards
et des
media
réseaux
and
sociaux?
social media?
Est-ce qu'il est évident
Is it
qu'un
evident
juge
for a
de
judge
clencher une affaire
to
et
decide
d'acquitter quelqu'un?
about
Alors
a
je ne vais pas donner
case
des exemples
and
maintenant parce que
to
tout le monde leur tombe dessus.
announce
Mais
someone
imaginons qu'un
innocent,
juge
for example? Let's say
considère
that a judge
qu'un de
considers
ces
that
noms qui ont
one
été
of the names
répétés inlassablement
that
par les
were
médias
mentioned in
est
media
innocent.
is innocent.
Osera-t-il le dire?
Would the judge
On a
dare to
plein
say
de
it? We
noms
have
que
a
tout le
lot
monde
of
cite.
names
Je ne
that
vais pas
can
les citer
be
parce que je ne veux pas ajouter au problème, mais
that are mentioned.
on les cite comme s'ils étaient
Those
déjà
people are
coupables.
mentioned as if
Quel
they are
juge, on peut paralyser la justice,
not
quel
innocent.
juge aura le courage de dire
Is
non,
there
mais en
any
fait,
judge
il est
who will
innocent ce
dare
monsieur,
to say that
alors qu'il a déjà
these
été
people are
lynché
innocent,
par les réseaux sociaux, par la population,
whereas
etc.
those people
Et là, c'est
are
notre
or
indépendance qu'il faut
were
protéger.
mentioned and
Si vous
attacked on
voulez,
social media?
moi, mon inquiétude
My
c'est qu'à
source
force de
of
parler
concern
de
is that
l'indépendance de la justice et de
speaking
lier
about the independence of
deux
judiciary
notions qui
and
sont
linking
l'impunité et
impunity to
l'indépendance de la
independence of
justice,
judiciary,
on ne
we
soit pas en
wouldn't be
train de
able to
percevoir l'indépendance de
perceive
la
the independence
justice
of
uniquement
judiciary
dans sa logique
only
coercitive.
within its
Et
coercive
j'invite donc à
logic,
ouvrir le débat
and
également
we
sur
can
le juge
open
protecteur des libertés
discussion
individuelles,
about
sur le juge
the
protecteur
judge
des
who
droits.
protects the
Et
individuals
je ne suis
and
pas
the
favorable
rights, and
personnellement
also
pour un rôle
I do
très
not
large sur le plan
favorize
normatif
a normative role of the judge, because there is a judicial security, and so I don't think about the role of the judge to change the regime. This is not the role of the judge. I'm trying to adapt something said by one of the experts. He said, I used to say that the people didn't vote well, we have to dissolve the people. So this should be the role of other institutions that play the role of the people. Of course, the political system in Lebanon must be reconsidered. Without reconsidering it, we cannot advance, we cannot progress, but the independence of the judiciary must also make benefits to the people, but this shouldn't depend also on the fundamental roles that must be protected all the time. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you.
Mr. Daher, and time for Q&A questions.
Thank you. Please go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Saghi and Dr. Nassar, for both interesting, however, different interventions. Well, since we are at the Jesuit University, I will do just like the Jesuits, do usually. We should be quite, diplomatic and flexible. Regarding what Mr. Nassar said, well, of course, he is right. However, we should differentiate between just a simple, ordinary accused and another responsible, one mainly political responsible. This is why, when judging somebody, we should judge him or her as per the results of his or her work. So, whenever there is a failure, political failure, we should, of course, say that the given person has failed to accomplish his or her mission, and this is why it will be legitimate to dismiss that person, even by the public opinion. However, if such a person says that she or he is not guilty and sticks to power, to his or her position, well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I would like to say that I was not asked to talk about media freedom and the political responsibilities. Of course, media are free to play their role, and of course, it's up to the people to express oneself. However, of course, this is not up to the judge, and it does not affect the independence of the judge. This is one of the fundamental rights and freedoms. Well, I do agree, but I have just mentioned a part of your intervention about media. Yes, I just wanted to clarify. Well, of course, any institution, mainly and namely the judiciary, should be solid enough to protect and support the judges. And of course, if a judge declares somebody innocent, well, he or she should not be taking the risk of being dismissed. Okay. Regarding Nizar, well, you have spoken about judges who are being affected by political interventions. They are even being appointed as per political interventions. This is why those politically appointed judges feel that they have a debt towards those who appointed them. This does not exist only in Lebanon, but also in the US. So we know that, every president at the US, he or she has the power, of course, to intervene with the judiciary. The same also exists in France. This is why, of course, we need, for instance, popular pressure. We need also to raise awareness, to have a better education, so as to have a real revolution for a real change in the judiciary. Now, in English,
flow together represent the troika that is universally accepted now as the index of a civil society. Based on your experience as prominent activist of the Lebanese civil society, what would you tell us about democracy and liberty in Lebanon nowadays?
We'll take all the questions.
Any question from... Yes.
Yes.
Hi, marhaba. So,
hello. Nizar, you spoke about a vicious cycle that politicians and political leaders are influencing more and more and politicizing more and more the judiciary, and they are not they are not consulting with the judiciary. So all problems are related to this regime, to this, to those leaders, to those politicians. This is why I was wondering that there is always a big block in everything, almost everything in our country. So, as we aspire for change, how can we, for instance, achieve the independence of the judiciary? Of course, with the existence of all the ongoing political class and all the political leaders which have much influence and much power. For instance, we can enact new laws. Is it a gradual progress that allows us to achieve what we aspire to, or do we need a radical change or a radical revolution? First of all, I decided to talk about impunity because we are not talking about a normal situation. We are talking of a population which has become a victim in all crimes, crimes of corruption, of deterioration, of economic failure. We all lost our income, our savings, our money, and then we had the famous blast, and this is why we have become victims. And what's happening now, I think, looks like the post-war period, however, with one main difference, because after the war we had much more hope to have a new state, but now we don't even have that hope because of the complete economic destruction. So we are the victims of a regime, of a system that is not held responsible, not held accountable. Whenever we want to prosecute somebody, then the prosecution turns against the judge, or the judge is influenced. Some judges are really independent and honest and decide to work, do the right things, but then everybody is against him. And we saw how the media turned against him and how he was accused of treason, and he was threatened on a daily basis, and then 21 fines were 21 lawsuits were filed against him. So because he dared to defy them. So any lawsuit that is examined by a judge turns things against the judge, and then you have people that are specialized to bully and to attack, to threaten on a daily basis the given judge. As for presumption of innocence, well, when somebody acknowledges the authority of a court and appears before the court. So this person should be treated as innocent until the verdict is pronounced. But when somebody defies the judiciary and does not respond when he is summoned, well, of course, such a person is using the whole system just to be impugned and to not to be judged. So such a person will acquire or has already acquired the presumption of innocence. Excuse me. Well, if somebody is going beyond the law and is not respecting the law, he or she should consider it as a wanted, as somebody who is not respecting the law. Of course, we can talk about many judges who are being attacked and threatened. Well, let's suppose that Judge Tariq Bitar did not do any mistake and he saw all the attacks in the media and everywhere. Well, who will protect him? Who will defend him? Who will just shut up those journalists and attackers on a daily basis? Well, of course, because of the system, the judge remains silent, provided that the society respects the judge. But well, this is something terrible. How can we protect such people, such judges, such people with limited capacities? Well, there are several independent judges, regardless who appointed them and who supported them. However, if they do not obey to their religious leaders or those who appointed them, they will be punished. We need independent, not only independent judges, but a whole independent judicial system. Most of independent judges are thrown away, if I may say. You know, they are appointed. Appointed in very basic and not important positions. So we need to protect, to defend judges. We need to have a stronger and a much more independent judicial system. And corrupted judges should not be protected. They should be judged. However, the opposite is happening, unfortunately. Judges who are corrupted, they are being, promoted, but those judges who are really independent and dare to, open critical files and examine critical cases, they are being punished. And now going back to your question, well, this is not something simple. We are talking about a regime, a system that is impugned, that does not want to be held responsible and accountable. This is why we cannot respond in one way. We need a multi-layered, let's say, leveled response. We saw that, the judicial pyramids are the most critical or serious things, because this system, pyramidal system, will not provide courageous judges with any defense, with any protection. They will be like rabbits facing lions.
فكيف بدك تعمل هاي الشبكات تضامن لتشيله من الاستفراد لحتى تشيل هالقناع.
So we need all to do all this so as to remove the mask that the government is wearing, because the government pretends not to intervene with the judiciary, which is not true. Well, actually, they are using multiple means to control judges, the pressure and etc., etc. So we need to finish with all this. I mean, we need to provide a free, safe space to all judges so as to let them have further resilience. However, of course, this wouldn't be enough, because 400 or 500 judges by themselves cannot change the whole system. This is why they need to be surrounded by this popular movement of solidarity and support. And of course, it is of utmost importance to spread the culture of independent judiciary. And this is why we have prepared all these bills in 2018, before the revolution, and with only having 1% of hope to see some of these bills being enacted. And then, despite all difficulties, we could impose our principles. And now we are working harder and harder so as to achieve our goal, because there are international principles that should prevail despite it all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saghiye.
بدي أشكر متر صغية.
I would like to thank lawyers Nassar and Saghiye and Mr. Bitar, and I would like to remind you that all the papers that are being presented by the speakers are already available on the LCF, Lebanese Citizen Foundation.
It's an ongoing discussion that goes beyond our today's forum. Thank you very much. And we'll proceed to topic number 4 in the panel.